Good evening. This is Education by Ed. It is time for Ed to say a few things.
Go ahead and take it away, Ed.
Thank you. Hey, thank everybody for joining us this evening. The whole point tonight, we want to get into surnames, and I'm going to get into little stuff called dealing with medical stuff with the surnames. And this is where people have got to start realizing what is really going on in our country. This is a real structure that when they are using these names, and everybody goes, oh, we have to go by a Christian name. Well, you know, one thing about Christian names, okay, I don't go by a foreign dictating book. So if you, it's like what they did to, what they did to us, what they did to the natives, is they gave them Christian names, they put them in foster care, they raped the children, and they threw us out on the street, and then they gave us chicken black blankets and poison us and all this other wonderful stuff. And people always go, people always go, we got to do this, we've got to do that. And I keep telling people, what do you mean we got to do this? What do we got to do that? Well, the Bible says this, the Bible says that. Well, folks, it doesn't matter what the Bible says. The Bible is a book of surnames. Comprehend what a surname is. That is the one thing that people need to realize, that a surname doesn't have basic any meanings. This is like where people get into these, well, I'm going to be a continental judge. I'm going to be a continental marshal. I'm going to be this and I'm going to be that. Well, hey, wonderful. But the only one that could give you a surname in that capacity is the Legislative House and Senate of Congress. Otherwise, you're not entitled to have a surname. And you really don't want a surname. You don't want to have one of those surnames, because when you have a surname, you are identifying as a British subject. You're going along and complying with the British court systems called what do they call that? Kangaroo court systems. So it's knowing the wording, and that's the one thing that we've been so conditioned by TV and radio on wordings, we don't even know what the structure of life really is about. Everybody has to go refer to a book instead of getting out and knowing what the woods are like, what it is to go hunting and fishing, what it is to go in the real structure of the woods, to go to take a river ride, a rapids rides. But everybody wants to go to these, what do they call them, parks. So we get all these little meanings mixed up. And that is the one thing, when they give you a surname, this is what goes on. They trap you in a structure called the court system. And that court system that you go to is a British court system. They're not American courts. Remember, your judges, attorneys, and cops, they don't love you. Their mother and daddy don't love you. Their parents don't care about you. And they sure as heck don't care about you. That is the one thing that you have to realize, that all these Christians, Christians, let's talk about Christians with the surname, okay? Because Christians are your judges, Christians are your attorneys, Christians are your lawyers, Christians are your clerks, your jailers, your cops that pull you over. Those are Christians. So I don't want to be part of the Christian structure that goes out and murders people, rapes children, and do that structure and saying that we're going to allow it. It's pretty damn sad when that's acceptable. And that's what we're living with today, acceptable crap. And it really is sad when people not paying attention to what the real truth is. So we get into surnames, and this is the other point that is very interesting. When you get a surname, that is your bloodline name that they claim. This is a structure that we are given, so we are indoctrinized. So it is one thing to go along with this fraud, and it's another one to deal with the circumstances of truth and honesty. And that is the one thing that we need to get into, truth and honesty. And I'm going to get into it because that's the one thing I want to talk about tonight too, with filings. And I'm putting out a thing on filings, I'm putting out a thing on filings with judges and stuff in the Fair Act. And I've almost got it done. I had to add some more stuff to this thing. It's becoming like a book. But I had to do it this way, so this way I got everything with the police departments in it. I got everything in the construction, the construction of the courts in it. So I want to make sure that people comprehend when they read this and all this stuff comes together and it's put together properly. You comprehend how it works compared to what you think it works. Remember, judges are not for you. They are for elected and public servants and church members. They are not for the we the people. They don't work for we the people. They don't care about we the people. You know, this is the one thing that you have to start standing up, and when you go file your paperwork, is knowing what you're filing your paperwork and what name you're using. Okay? Do not put the capital structure in when you file a paperwork. Never use capitals. You use capitals, you're saying you're a citizen. People say, well, I'll put everything in all capitals. No, you do that, you're agreeing to their terms and contracts. That's part of your filings. You don't want to do that. Everything I do, I always put in lowercase. Especially when it comes to names. If it's lowercase, they cannot try to interpret something another way to utilize it for their own gain. And that's where you have to realize that how these people use this stuff and these type of things for their own personal gain. They'll use your surname for their own personal gain, filing paperwork called birth certificate bonds and insurance policies. And remember, you are an insurance policy. And that's the one thing that none of us can get out of. We are an insurance policy. And the other point is that I'm going to get into this one here. It's called citizenship. See, if you use the word citizenship, or you are a citizen of a ship, or you are aboard a U.S. citizenship, see, this is what gets to people they don't comprehend. You are no longer on the land of jurisdiction when you use the word citizenship or your surnames. Surnames came from, England was the structure of it. And so the state citizen basically is supposed to be immune from attacks from the government or your elected and public servants, and that's the Dred Scott versus Stanford, 60 U.S. But remember, these people right now are not going by their constitution or their oath. We know it. So, but when I put this thing together that I'm doing on this, I'm putting the actual laws that in this instrument that makes it clear that these men and women have no immunity. So when we start bombarding them with these autographs, with all this stuff, because we're all going to have to nail our local politicians with this, our local fire departments, even your doctors, because they get paid by the state and federal government. So they are a contractor, and they have to register. And that's where people don't comprehend with filings of how it works. So the only way we're going to get this court system back back on track is if we start doing it. We're seeing some changes going on from what Trump has done, and people are panicking. Apparently, Jeff Sessions just got nailed, I guess, to be part of the Hammonds and Bundy case with the uranium. Apparently he was part of Hillary's deal with that. Excuse me. So apparently he was part of that instrument. So there's a lot more coming out. And there's a lot more coming out with the Bundys and Hammonds because they knew that they entered into a deal with Hillary Clinton in that structure. So, like I was mentioning earlier to a guy, we were having a conversation on that, and I said it does make you wonder why they went after him on public land and did what they did for possibly not going along with their original contract. So anyhow, so you comprehend, a state cannot exclude a person from practicing law or from any other occupation in the manner or for the reason of conveying the due process of equal production. I'll be posting some of this stuff on my Facebook wall, but this is stuff that I'm actually putting in this letter, so this way they know that when they say, oh, you can't practice law, well, here's the law that says you can, because there's no such thing as a practice. Remember, doctors and lawyers are basically the same profession because they issue each other, what is that called? They issue each other a license, and the only one that issues a license is the bar and the medical society. There is no government issue licenses. And then we have the states that issue like light driver's licenses and other stuff. And I've been talking to people about that, and people are going, oh, you have to pay your building permits. Folks, if you're a private landowner, you don't pay them. And when they threatened you, then you file an affidavit to sue them. They'll back off. They know it. They know that you don't need a building permit. I mean, a guy right now is in jail for building a windmill on his property to get off the grid. Well, and it's interesting, why is he in jail? How come nobody helped him filing? How come he didn't know what he was doing? See, before you start stepping in with your surname on things and filing your papers and you use your surname, you're going along with the system and guaranteeing the system your structure that way. And that is the one thing that you are going along with, is saying that in the structure you're agreeing to their terms by using your surname or your registration number, not your birth certificate or anything else. And 42408 Section D says if you use your birth certificate, Social Security number, it's a federal crime. You're not supposed to give it out to anybody. And I'm not mistaken, it says that on the Social Security card too. And then the other point is of 752.02, justices, judges, municipality judges, oath to office, this is what's going in this stuff. Their salary, they get paid, and it says they get paid a salary for conservators of the peace. So they're supposed to be of the peace. They're not supposed to be making money, fines and regulations off of us, because they already get a salary. But when they do that, they rape, rob, and pillage us, and that's exactly what they're doing. So that's the whole frustration point with surnames. Because the one thing with surnames was really disgusting, because the natives, when the native Indian, when they were giving their structure, when they're getting this stuff with their structure, what they did to the natives. This is the sad part. You know, nobody goes along, or they just keep going along with it. It's like Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was not a peaceful time for the natives and the people. The natives were murdered and raped. You know, they didn't sit down to have a feast. See, our history lies to us to mind control. And this is the saddest point, is that we get taught these things because we think it's okay. And that's the whole point, is that we're going along and think it's okay. And so if it sounds good to our mind, it sounds good to us. And that is a frustrating point. And your surname goes back to dealing with your family name. But see, I don't like using the term surname. I'll use my family's name. But see, that's the whole point, is don't say the word sir, is you use your family's name if you want to. Surnames, like I said, came from Christianity, from the Christians. These are your cops, your lawyers, your judges. And that's what I say. And I argue with people all the time, oh, Christians are wonderful, Ed. And I said, how come they rape, rob, and murder people? People go, oh, you just don't know it, Ed. You just don't know what's going on out there. Yes, I do. Your judges, your attorneys, your jailers, your case workers, DHS workers, They're all Christians. Most of them go to church. Part of their structure of Christianity, so they go out and they rape, rob, and pillage, and people endorse this, goes, oh, I'm a Christian. Well, sorry, I don't want to be a Christian. I don't want to join the club that goes out and rapes, robs, and murders children. Steals children for families, for personal gain of a corporation or a church. Remember, that's how churches used to make a living, too, with stealing kids and then selling them off. Well, that's right, they still do it today. And that's been going on for generations. Churches rape, rob, and pillage. That's nothing new. And this is where people have got to stop. We can stop and look back at what we're living today and quit judging things they don't know what they're doing. And the one thing is that when a judge and an officer of a court or an attorney, because he is an officer of the court too, and attorneys are, they're not eligible to run for any other elected positions if they have one of those titles of nobility. They can't be in any other office. And a lot of these men and women are. And so that's the point that once this thing gets out, we need to start filing this on these men and women and make them accountable for what they have done to we the people. We the people is just we the people. It's not just Indians, it's not just blacks, it's not just any other color or any other name that somebody wants to use. And when you use the term African American or Chinese American or whatever American, you're going to realize that, you're using a terminology that is giving the government credence. Either you're an American, and if you put a title of nobility in front of American, you have no rights. You give up your rights. Because when you're using a title of nobility, that's exactly what you're doing, is destroying yourself, your people, your family, your bloodline. That's the one thing that people do not seem to really comprehend. I've talked to people, and a lot of people, they just don't give a shit. It ain't about, if it ain't about them, they don't care. That's the sad part about the structure. People just don't care when it's not about them directly. Which I always find pretty sad when people do that and they think everything's about them. And so when you do a filing, and any type you do a filing, and I want to clarify this for people, because most people do not get this when they do file paperwork. Okay, either you're an injured man or woman or you're not. And if you're an injured man or woman, you have to put in your instruments Corpus Delicti Code 3771. If you do not put that in your filing, that's where the judge could throw it out. Because the judge could throw it out just based on that alone, because you're claiming, and if you sign the thing, if you sign the paperwork and not autograph it, sign it, you're signing it as a dead man hand. An autograph means it has value, you're a living man or woman. A signature means it's a dead man's hand. That's what a signature is. And if you use the black ink, which most people like to use black ink, that means you're dead. Blue is maritime, ocean. Red is blood, living man. Gold is royalty. Silver ink is a good one for man to use too, because that means you're alive silver. But it's like people need to know what the color ink is. When you do file an instrument, how it goes in and gets filed. That is the one thing that people need to file that. And then the other point that I've been talking to Mike, putting things together so this way we get people to start standing up with each other. I'm behind on a couple of reading cases that I've been doing. People have sent me, and I'm trying to get caught up because I've been quite busy on a lot of things and writing and research, because I'm trying to get the research done. But it's putting this stuff for the surnames on this stuff, so that way you know what you're putting there, and you don't want to get into a conflict of interest with the courts in your filings. So when you file, it's always good, because like I said, what we have, As they wrote it, we, the lawful bloodline Americans, quote it. So we're quoting what they have out there. And so we're using their words back on them. And that is the one thing that is very good to do that, to use their words back to them. Because they can't dispute their own words or their own court cases, their own decisions. But that's where you have to write your cases and start looking at how it works. The structure of, how all that stuff comes together and how the courts look at things. The one thing, too, that the trick that the courts like to do is that they like to throw court cases out. And if you do put it on front and back of the paper, then that way when a judge flips the paper on your filing, he can't say he didn't see something. Because they like to use that a lot in courts structure. I didn't see that in the case. And that's when they flip the paper. It's a blank piece of paper, and that's how they get away with that. So it is learning little tricks of the trade of how these men and women do this to their structure of what they do to you and me. Most of all, the children. The children are not safe. Children are not safe. That's a financial gain for the corporation. It really is. It's financial gain. That's why it's a birth certificate bond. That's why it's on bank notes. So this is the one thing that when it comes down to the circumstances, the way it's written is knowing how to pay attention to your filing, your surname, what they're using against you, and how they are going to use it against you. It's like if you get transported in an ambulance today. This is true facts, folks, true facts. You get transported in an ambulance and, somebody gets transported in an ambulance and they pass on. By law, they're not supposed to give you any information. How they died, what they did, the whole circumstances. Because their job is to protect the insurance company. It's what attorneys and basically some of the doctors are doing today, protecting the insurance company. They don't care about you. Remember, these men and women care about their paycheck. These men and women make a good size of a paycheck, so they care about their paycheck more than they care about. Most of them care about more of the money than they care about their own children. So this is the one thing that we are dealing with today with, surnames, filings in courts. And if you want to file in court too, I do have the paperwork that I put up. It should be on the website new.org and trackers, where you can go on to that and you can research it, and then you can find out, because I do have it where all court fees, if you are not a person, are free of charge. If you're claiming to be a person other than a man, woman, then you're liable to pay. And that's where most people don't research. They don't look at how it works. See, they just go, if I don't pay, I don't get that. And I talk to people all the time, and they say, well, I just pay the system so I get my case in. Okay, so you're using a debt note for something that the court system is supposed to be open to you. That's what I find interesting. So you're reusing a debt note that you shouldn't be having a debt note to be used, because you're supposed to be free of charge. They created a court system that's supposed to defend us and work for us, not against us. And it's up to us to start standing up on these circumstances and proving these situations. It's up to us to prove them. It's up to us. Everybody keeps going, well, I keep voting these people in. They haven't changed anything. Well, your senators and House of Representatives, hey, they're Christians, remember. They're out for themselves. They don't care. They want the money. Your life ain't important to them because the money is more important to them than you are. And that's where you have to start really stepping out and looking why things are going through the way they are working, why the last 10, 15, 20 years our system has gone to a heck in a handbasket, because everybody wants to say, it's a democracy. Well, democracy is the devil's word, and it says, thou shalt pay and give my assets over to the church for everybody. That's the main thing. People just will give their stuff over. I mean, I watched a guy on a video because of the so-called, excuse me, one of the other shootings happened, so he's out there breaking an AR-15 with a sledgehammer out in a driveway. And I'm thinking to myself, how much did the Democrats, and who's the Democrat who paid him to do that? Really and truly, come on. Nobody's going to sit out there and just go destroy an arm, you know, $1,000 or $1,500 rifle for just to destroy it because now I'm going to go against arms? Most people have more dignity than that. They'll sell it. So when you watch this guy on YouTube radio slashing, destroying this gun on the YouTube, on Facebook, I've been watching when that came around. It's crazy. People are losing their minds. Could be because of the smart meters. We know the smart meters are mind altering. That's a fact. If people don't want to believe that, well, it's like Disneyland movies are mind altering. Come on. Look at the subliminal messages that are in Disney movies. They got a lot of them in Disney movies. So when you're using your surname, and, you know, people get into that, well, that's my family, that's pride. Well, it's interesting because surnames didn't happen until people came from foreign countries that came to this country. People here didn't go by surnames until foreigners moved here and brought their beliefs, their Bible, their structure with them. And then started shoving it down other people's throat, telling them if you don't believe in their Bible, their structure, you have no rights. And that's exactly what Christians do. If you don't agree with them, you know, they blacklist you, they scold you. You know, it's amazing what Christians do to people. It really is. You know, I mean, people call themselves Christians. That's what scares me. When somebody calls themselves a Christian, because I don't see them standing up for what they're claiming they believe in at all. I don't see them reading the Bible. I don't see them reading the Constitution. The Bible doesn't give you rights. Everybody says, well, God gives me unalienable rights. Well, who's God? What God? Where's the God? Where's your unalienable rights? Where's God that gave it to you? It's a figment of your imagination. Oh, that's right. We're supposed to believe. Well, we all have something that we believe in. I like the Great Spirit and the Constitution to believe in. I don't like to go off on a structure dealing with another belief system, saying if I don't believe in this, that, and the other thing, I'm not supposed to have any future. I'm not supposed to have any life. And like I mentioned last week, you know, England is now charging a carbon tax. That's on your property taxes. And folks, you got to wake up to this one. Because if you don't know what a carbon tax is, all right, you breathe in and out air every day. So you're a carbon unit. You have to be realistic with this, too, you know. And if you don't stand up and catch on to this, you're the one that's going to be paying with your life. Because if you don't pay the carbon tax, oh, you can't breathe air. You're not taking care of the structure, are you? That's where people don't get it, you know. They just don't see that part. They just go crazy when you don't see how simple these things work for us or against us. And that's where we've got to start being realistic on this stuff. And I said to folks, being realistic. I mean, you have to start stepping out of the movie, watch the production, and start putting it together. Because if we don't start doing that, there's no future for your kids, your bloodline. I was like, Isaac texted me and says, there's no such thing as a bloodline. Okay, well, he's not even from this country. I get that. All these foreigners will tell you that you don't need to go by that description called lawful. are legal. Because they want to keep everything legal, because they make a living off of it. That's their employment, to make a living off of it and off of you. That's like people who make false police reports on people on what they call DHS. Oh, this kid did that, this kid did this, or, you know, when kids mostly have never done a lot of stuff that people claim they do. It makes you wonder how many people are watching movies and they get this stuff off on movie. It does make you question the people's mentality and saneness and what's around you. Absolutely it does. So, anyhow, like I said, the one thing is when you're doing your filings, always put in Civil Rights Act, all right? And that is 18 U.S.C. 3771. And then the other one you should look up, too, is 18 U.S.C. 3510. And this goes to jury trials and victims. See, there are things out there, it's knowing how to use them and knowing how to say them. And I know it gets hard sometimes and it gets baffled because people are afraid to say different things or repercussions. But you can't be afraid of your own shadow. That is the one thing I learned a long time ago. So I think we'll open up the floor at this point. So I think we'll open up the floor. So why don't we do this?
All participants are unmuted.
So anybody want the floor first? Nobody wants the floor. Okay, I thought we were going to have a couple people speaking up tonight, but apparently not. So anyhow, go ahead.
Just my quick question on this. This show took something that I didn't expect. I mean, I thought you were going to talk about like titles and nobility, you know, sir, mister, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was gonna get in. I'm gonna get in. Yeah, I'll get into that one.
Okay, so I got confused over nothing. Okay.
No. No. You didn't get confused. That's what I was trying to get. Hopefully, we were gonna have somebody speak up. That's what I thought, but that didn't happen. You know what I mean? So, but you know, the name Sir. Mr. Mr. is a title of nobility. Sir is a title of nobility. Man, Miss. You see, you're putting a title in front of the living man or woman. So when you're putting that title in front of a living man or woman, you are declassifying them as a living American, and you're classifying them as a native Canadian or British subject. And that's when you put that in like court cases. And when people will put that in a court case, sir or mister, you know, and if you write mister in a court case, you know, you never use those titles of nobility, especially when you're writing a court case. Most people don't get that point, you know. They'll sit there and write court cases and use the title of nobility in a court case. So, I mean, it's like a doctor. That's a title of nobility. An attorney, esquire. Title of nobility is, anything that has a title in front of it. That is the point that you're going to realize that when you do this with a title of nobility, you're giving up your Constitution rights, period. Because you're saying, I don't have a right to the Constitution. And especially if you hire an attorney, you give up your Constitution rights. That's a guarantee. Because when you hire an attorney, that's called hiring a sir to speak for you. So you're telling everybody around you you're not responsible or have the capability of speaking for yourself. So you have to hire an attorney, and people all the time will do that, hire an attorney, and then they wonder why they lose their cases. Well, remember, the attorney is a surname that works for the court. He doesn't work for you. You're not giving him his paycheck. You're just giving him basically Federal Reserve notes that he really doesn't need, to tell you the truth, but we give him those things. We give him different credits that we're not supposed to give people credit like that. And so when we do that, when we give them credit on stuff that they are taking advantage of, and that, yes, these men and women do take advantage, these public servants. And they love it when you go in and use surnames in it, when you do a name before your name. You know, Sir Tom, whatever. If you use the title, you are claiming that title of a British subject. And that's where you need to realize that you are changing your status in this country or in a court case by putting that title and nobility together. You're changing your status as a lawful American or a legal American or a citizen. And I don't like the term citizen. I don't like the term citizen because, and everybody goes, well, it says that state citizen. And it's like when you do the research, and I've done the research on citizen and nationals, and it states the same thing. It comes back to an organization of basically a colony, and so you're giving your authority to the colony's court system. And that's through the court cases, and that's even as part of the structure of the Constitution, the way it's written. So a surname is when you're saying that, oh, I could be knighted, I'm better than somebody else, I'm taking credibility that gives me a credibility, so I think I'm more powerful. I think I have, gives me more accreditation, as someone might think, when it doesn't. Surnames don't give you accreditation. Your reputation of the good and bad you do give you your reputation. That's what people get to know you by, is good and bad stuff. And when you're honorable, that's what people need to know. They don't need your surname. The surname is a financial instrument. And that's the one thing that people got to realize. It is a financial instrument. You know, you can look at that on your paychecks. You can look at that on a check when you write a check. That's the one thing that people don't comprehend, how when you do those certain things, you give up your name. You give up your standing. So, like, you know, for the Navy has surnames with all their departments, corporal, lieutenant. You know, those are surnames, military surnames. So every agency or every structure that we have has a structure that has a title of nobility. But the only ones that legally can give a title of nobility is the House and Senate. So when men and women go out and take their accreditation and put their own words in front of their name and trying to make them sound more important, it's like people go, oh, I'm a public figure. What the hell is a public figure? When it really comes down to it, you know, who wants to be a public figure? What, you think because you say that I'm a public figure, it gives you meaning, or I'm an activist, it gives you more authority? That's a surname. You're giving yourself a credit that we don't need. All you have to do is when you file your instruments, your paperwork, all you need is your given name. In all my paperwork, I always write given name. I didn't make that choice of that surname that they gave me or family name. So it's a given name. I didn't claim it. I didn't own it. It was given to me. I did file on mine to own mine and own me. But you have to do that when you're 18 years old to own you. And people will argue with you on that one, but you want to own you. If you don't file your ownership on you, that way when anything goes to court, the court has to represent a charter of the corporation. And your surname is a charter of a corporation. So if you get forced with an attorney, that's why I always write my own instruments and have them filed with the Secretary of State, the county the county elections department, where they file the paperwork. Make sure all that stuff's on file at the paperwork, at the county and state. And then that way, if you're forced through attorney, here's my paperwork. Attorney has to represent my contract, and it says the law that attorney has to represent the corporation charter. Well, here's my charter. So you write your charter. Because when you go in with that birth certificate, and the other thing I have done, and I've gone into court with my birth certificate and was trying to give it to the judge. And they freaked out on me in the courthouse when I did that. And they're like, why would you give a birth certificate to the judge or the DA? Well, that's who they want. They don't want me because I didn't do no crime. I just, they went after me the last time for speaking up on an illegal warrant that was issued. So this is the one thing when it comes down to, dealing with your filing of your name, and you can always change your name, your given name, but that's up to you to change it. But if you do it, you got to do it lawfully to legally. And that means filing it in the county with your structure and then file it in the court. And that's the one thing with that type of thing. I don't recommend it, but that's up to people. People like doing that, changing their names and structures like that. And you can always go on the internet and type in surnames, what they have up there, so you can do genealogy background checks and stuff like that. But it's when it gets to the point where it's financially gain, and that's what the surname is, the financial tool for the corporation. It's another tool for the corporation. And, it has value, but the other point is, to who? Does it have value to you? And that's the other thing, too, when they start doing this gender testing and all this. And they're changing, the men and women are changing their name because of gay and lesbian issues. And your DNA is all going to be the same. Your surname on that is going to be the same. They can't change your DNA. And that's where people get off and basically la-la land thinking you could change your gender when you can't. You can take all the pills and all the surgeries and all that, but when they do a DNA test, you're still whatever you were born. So, and like I said, when it comes to using a surname, you want to make sure that you don't put it in capitals. At least I suggest. I can't tell you what to do. You're on your own. But I suggest never put them in capitals. I always put mine in a lower structure because in that way, that's saying I'm a living man or woman. People will argue with me on that one, but I haven't seen a court case that hasn't gone through or not go through when it's being written in small letters instead of the large capitals. And it's knowing how these courts work, too, when you're filing your paperwork. And the other point is know what court you're filing your paperwork in. Because you have to know the court you're filing in. And I'll be getting into that the next couple weeks. So I'll get the list of courts and read that off and go through the structure of each court. And I think that's one thing that people need to know, what court. You're going to be in small claims. You're going to be in mortgages, land court. There's more than one type of court when you go to a courthouse. And the other point is that when you go to a courthouse, that's the one thing, nobody likes going to a courthouse. So I agree with that one. And so when it comes down to that point, please think about what you're putting in your instruments. And like I said, the one thing is when you do your instruments, always refer yourself as a corpus delicti 3771. And like research I've done in court cases that I've watched get thrown in or thrown out, people didn't claim a standards or a title of nobility, as some would say. Well, I hate to tell you, folks, it's so simple, but 18 U.S.C. doesn't say a title of nobility, but it's claiming if you're lawful, legal, or if you're a bloodline American, or if you're a bloodline immigrant, that you have to clarify those things when you go to court. But a corpus delicti means that you are a living man or woman. And that's where it comes down to. You have to decide if you're a living man or woman or corporate slave. We got enough of those going around as it is. So, anyhow, I'm going to read this other part here coming up. See, it's like I said, when I'm putting this stuff together on this Fair Act, I want to make sure I'm getting everything in as possibly I can, especially dealing with the police and the judges, because if we got that in there and it's done correctly, when this is served out to your elected and public officials, they have no choice to register and file. And when you do this, at least give somebody the benefits out. If you know family members or stuff like that, please give the information to them, let them read it, and let them figure out on their own if they're going to register or not. Because it's their decision. But at least give them the benefit of the doubt and give them some education of, knowledge to do something like that. And then the other point I want to bring up is 8 U.S.C. Code 2385, advocating to overthrow the government. And this is where people get charged with quite a bit. I've seen a lot of people been charged with this over the last couple of years because of titles of nobility. I'm a judge, I'm a doctor, I'm this, even though that they don't have the right to do that. So basically you're trying to overthrow the government in a sense by doing that, your name change of a surname, and acting in a manner that's aggressive. And that even includes when you're writing your affidavits. So that's why I always recommend that you put the structure in it of what you're filing with it, and use their administrative rules, their laws, into the structure of your filings. To advocate to overthrow the government, that is something that is really stupid and crazy, but the law is 8 U.S.C. Code 2385. The only ones who do that to overthrow the government mainly is your elected and public servants. Because if we the people are the government, how are we going to overthrow ourselves? That's the whole point. People don't step out and look and think about things like that. You can't overthrow yourself. And so it is sad that we live in such a era of time that these things are going on like this. And so when you look at your surname and you file your paperwork in a court, try to file it as a living man or a woman, because that's going to give you credibility in the court system. If you file it in the way that they want it, the judge controls your case, you have no say. And that's where people lose their main structure. When you lose, you have no say in your court case. And the best thing is write your court case, so that way you're controlling the judge. And there are ways of doing that very well. And remember, surnames all came from England and Spain. The United States, we didn't know nothing about surnames until these people brought it here. Most natives had one name primarily. They didn't have a first, middle, and last name like most people do today. And they're given names. Your name was given to you. You didn't ask for it. That's one thing that people don't see, that reality. How do we not see when it's forced on us, basically? So, anyhow, I guess some things, we still got the floor open, don't we? I guess that's a yes. Oh.
We do.
And the one thing is, go ahead. Okay.
Down microphone. I was saying, yes, we do.
Okay. And you can type in British surnames. And this was started, and the surname structure was really implemented back in 1881. And that was the first census in England, was 1881. And so when they say you need to do a census, ain't no law says you need to do a census. That law only applies to citizens and nationals, if you read it. I'm not a national, I'm not a citizen. I'm a living man of American descent, So I don't go by foreign thinking, foreign instructions. So, and that's the one thing. If we can eliminate that from the children, we can do a whole heck of a lot better in the future than what we have today. Whole heck of a lot better. So, anyhow, I got into it a little bit tonight. I want to get this thing, this filing done so we can start filing on our public servants. I've been working on that for a month now, and now all of a sudden it's starting to really come together. Sometimes it takes a little time when you're putting these things together, so you want to make sure that they make rational sense when you're filing something, and you want to make sure the evidence is all in the structure so that way there's no conflict of interest. And I'm talking for them. That way they cannot go into a conflict of interest for themselves trying to say there is one. So, when you read the stuff that I've been putting up on my Facebook walls about judges and attorneys and the structure of these things, it's very indisputable. So they can't dispute what the structure is of what is being filed on them, because they wrote it. And that's the beauty of it about quoting their writing. It's like to Article 4 of the Constitution. It says we're entitled to a republic form of government. We are not a democracy, nor will we ever be. But that's the one thing that we have to stand up and stop. We, the people, have to stand up and stop. When these people are trying to convert us, like, Muslims and these other religions, it's disgusting. They're trying to take our beliefs and put their own beliefs in this country. And people say, oh, you're racist, or they come up with so many stupid things because you don't want to go along with somebody's religion and belief, so you're categorized. I thought the Constitution gave it as a clear distinction, a separation of church and state. And I know some people have been pushing that on the internet for people to combine church and state, and folks, if you do that, you're going to be hung, and guillotines are going to be used, because if you don't go by one religion race that they're putting together right now on the soil around the world, if you don't go by their religion, they're already talking about beheading people. The same thing the Christian Crusades did, no different. So, anyhow, and then so you get this one, Federal Terrorism Act, Criminal Codes, 18 U.S.C., Chapter 113B. This is dealing with terrorism of international means activities. So when you have public employees that are writing citations, that's a terrorist act. That's the one thing that you could always write these codes and administrations that they have to them. When you get a traffic ticket, that's a terrorist act. That's embezzlement. That's racketeering, fraud, and extortion. And I'm getting ready to do that, writing that up for my property taxes, because they're coming after me on that. But, it's life the way it is. So knowing what a terrorist act is, your surname can be used as a terrorist act too. And that's the one thing that people don't get, that one. So that's why I try to stay away from those type of circumstances myself, so I don't get caught up in the conflict of interest. And if you're always going to court, the one thing too you always want to do for a judge and the opposing attorney, you want a conflict of interest statement. You want to prove that they don't have a conflict of interest. Sort of hard to do when they're both bar members. So it's looking at how the things work and what people think it is compared to what it really does. So I guess we don't have no people want to get in tonight, so I guess I'm going to wrap it up a little early tonight, because I still got a lot to prepare for tomorrow night, because I got a lot coming out with this 1938 Foreign Administration Registration Act. So I guess I'm going to call it a night. I would like to thank everybody for joining us. May the Great Spirit, Mother Earth, bless you. May the Creator overlook and protect you. And so look at the options, and if you're going to be filing, file your paperwork. Use their words in it. Use their expressions. It's like when they, and the other point is that you weren't arrested unless it was a criminal activity that you did, personal and property damage. If it was not a criminal activity, don't use the word arrest. Use the word kidnapped and held for ransom. Because you were kidnapped and held for ransom for their payments. So you weren't arrested. You were actually legally kidnapped and held for ransom for personal gain of a corporation. So with that, I'd like to say good night, and may you all travel safe.
Well, thank you for listening to Education by Ed. Today's date is today. Well, Sunday, November 26, 2017. And remember, somebody calls you Mr. or Sir, they're trying to put a title of nobility on you. It may be now considered a sign of respect, but by the Constitution, that is still a title of nobility. Therefore, correct them in a gentle way, and if they keep insisting, then educate them.
You don't want to pay their fees.
The what?
Said you don't want to pay their fees when they're giving you a title of nobility. They try to get you in a fee structure.
Ah, yes. There we go. You got it straight from the horse's mouth.
Thanks. So, anyhow, y'all have a good evening.
Yep, y'all have a good evening, and we'll see you tomorrow night. Oh, Ed.
Yeah.
Do we mention the other option from Monday?
Which option?
Possibility of moving?
Oh, the dates yet? No, we'll do that next time.
Okay, stay tuned for next week when we may have some breaking news.
Yes, we'll have some adjustments coming up, and so we'll get that squared away and brought to everybody's attention once we have it set and ready to go.
All right, and it is